With N7 Day having just passed a little while ago, we got our yearly reminder at this point that Mass Effect 5 is still in development over at BioWare. Personally, I'm super excited for the project and wonder where they will be going after their recent re-release of the original trilogy, and it being years after the rough launch that they had with Andromeda. It's very cautious optimism though, because their past 3 or 4 releases just haven't had me as excited as I used to be whenever I would hear a new title was being worked on by BioWare. I to this day haven't played Andromeda, but I've always been interested, all launch time bugs and complaints aside. I'll probably end up getting through it soon, but from what we know of the teasers provided from Mass Effect 5 so far, it looks like the OG N7 crew might be making a return to this new entry into the series. I also recommend checking out a video I recently came across from content creator Paragon7, where she breaks down every theory she has, which details that the original trilogy and Andromeda may both be important to Mass Effect 5, and it'll be linked down below if you're interested. Overall, all of this got me thinking, why in the world am I so hyped for Mass Effect 5, even though we've gotten almost no news on it? And I landed on it was the potential on what it could be. If the earlier mentioned theory is even close to right, and what it could mean for fans of the original trilogy that might be drawn back in, bringing this series back to the hype levels it once had back in the day. And with many people seemingly being in agreement and also losing a lot of faith in BioWare recently for one reason or another, I came up with a list of the top 3 things that need to be in Mass Effect 5. These are all things that could bring the hype levels back to an all-time high, and if implemented correctly and well, could bring back faith that BioWare maybe hasn't lost their edge completely after all. Let's start with number 1 being make our previous choices matter in a meaningful way. If this in fact is bringing back the N7 crew, there is no reason some of our pinnacle choices, if not every major choice, should be reflected in this game in one way or another. Whether through importing a save from the Legendary Collection, or having us fill out a giant sheet of choices before the game officially starts, whether through an app where we can import the info, or directly in the game itself. The method doesn't really matter, as long as they don't do what people primarily complained about with Veilguard, where only a couple of past decisions from Inquisition really bled through. Personally, I think not only decisions made in Mass Effect 3, but decisions made all the way back in Mass Effect 1 should somehow weigh in on the story, and how the N7 crew is or even behaves in Mass Effect 5. If you think about it, Mass Effect 1 has the major choice of having Ashley or Kaidan sacrifice themselves. So even back then, there was an important decision gamers made that crafted their story and their lore around the N7 crew. Just having a canonical version be Ashley was saved or Kaidan was saved completely spits in the face of the player's journey, whether they think so or not, in which this person was with them and in their crew from when Mass Effect 1 came out, all the way to when their playthrough of Mass Effect 3 ended. Mass Effect was one of the first real series where I realized not only did my choices really matter, as they were reflected in not only my version of Shepard, but the world and people around me. Your decisions in pivotal moments of the plot make this as close to something as a choose-your-own narrative experience, or something like a Dungeons & Dragons or Baldur's Gate-like story as almost any game has done to this day, putting you and your decisions at the center of not only the plot, but ultimately the Mass Effect universe. Whether you chose to commit genocide to other alien species for the greater good, or just for your morbid pleasure, or you managed to save every species out there against the Reaper threat, while being a paragon of justice and did every good deed possible, the world and the crew, if they are indeed back, should reflect that and mention it if ever asked about the events of the past. This of course isn't a simple task for BioWare to pull off at all, as it would mean a ton of branching storylines, hundreds of pages of lore and story for all the different variations possible, and countless hours of writing, voice acting, and remembering all of the plot threads they put out beforehand. But if they were to pull this off, this would be a huge selling point for old fans to rally back behind BioWare and truly be hyped for their next release. When it comes to point 2, I feel this one is really simple. Make a great villain and great characters. The villain doesn't have to be grand. It can even be like Mass Effect 1 was, where there was just teases of the big menaces to really come, while still putting a formidable and menacing main antagonist in front of us to truly feel like this person or thing could be a real threat to the universe as a whole. When it comes to great characters, you already have the formula. Hell, you basically are cheating if you are indeed bringing back the N7 crew. The characters from the original trilogy were so fleshed out and beloved throughout our time with them in the series that it's almost impossible to mess them up at this point. But that doesn't mean that they should remain stagnant. Depending on the events of Mass Effect 1 through 3 and their experiences with Shepard and how Shepard's story ended in your save, they should fully develop into their own character and have their own unique major developments from the end of 3 all the way to Mass Effect 5. The best example I could give is they should have a development along the lines that you see in someone like Garrus in between 1 and 2, where he's a certain way in Mass Effect 1, and then in Mass Effect 2, he has his own personal arc he went through, then he became Archangel in Mass Effect 2 with his own objectives and story to tell in the time between. Let alone a development like Liara, where when you leave her to her own devices for a while, all of a sudden she's the Shadow Broker with a mysterious and fast uprising as a mainstay for information in the universe. All of these are just examples of the changes I would love to see in the characters we develop bonds with throughout the original trilogy, but is also developments I want to see in new characters that join the crew or that are just major side characters in the story. Now, moving on to our final point being number 3, which is make an epic story, have choices matter just in this title alone, and have those said choices be reflected in a big way. Now, sadly, I do think BioWare may be facing thin ice when it comes to them possibly being disbanded if this game doesn't become a great success. We don't know the ins and outs of what's truly on the line when it comes to this title, but I think it's safe to say a lot of people are already out of the BioWare can do no wrong hype train, and the money has been following suit. I do believe this could be one of, if not the final chance before layoffs start becoming a thing, as we've seen with countless other studios without as prestigious track records of prior games like BioWare has. This game in particular needs the story to be epic and have major choices reflected in its story for 2 reasons. 1, they probably don't have a guarantee of sticking around for another entry if they want choices we make in this game to pay off for a theoretical Mass Effect 6. And 2, because in order for BioWare to be okay after some flops and semi-successful releases, I think they need this game to be a huge win to stave off the losses. This in turn would also have the player base feel really good and happy with Mass Effect 5 because they would get an ultimate story experience without having to wait on an additional title to see the grand plot or reflections in their player choices. Overall, those are the top 3 things I think Mass Effect 5 truly needs in order to draw people in and put people behind not only this franchise again, but BioWare as a whole. But that's enough out of me. Let me know what you would like to see from Mass Effect 5 in order for you to be hyped in the comment section down below. Other than that, guys, that's enough out of me for today, but as always, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed or found it entertaining, make sure to scroll down and make that like button glow so we can reach our like goal of 25 likes for this video. While you're down there, consider subscribing as we'll be covering more Mass Effect 5 as updates come out, other AAA games throughout the year, hilarious content, and more. As always, your support through your viewership, liking, and subscribing is always greatly appreciated and helps me out tremendously against the universal threat that is the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to catch you guys next time. Peace!